Yeah,
All right.
easy, thanks.
So for question 4, I'm going to go by each question. So it's very simple stuff. Simple linear regression, and it's asking you to do a y by x, and it's asking you to do y is your annual growth, which is this one. And I have noticed some of you guys have it as percentages, some do not. If you have it in decimal places, it makes no difference. You can do it on your computer and you'll get the same results. So you just go to your data analysis toolbar. Does anybody not know how to do that? How to get to the data analysis toolbar? Right. So I already highlighted that column. So that's the growth. As you can see here, it's between 1990 and 2000. Sorry, the GDP. And your X variable, it's the mean temperature. So it's this one here. And you have to make sure you tick the labels. Don't tick constant 0. And that's what you get. And I'll show you a little trick how to copy this into your document. So a lot of people just do a copy and paste and it looks like that, looks like shit. You can paste it as a picture. So that'll save a lot of space. If anybody's not following, just let me know. Okay. It says, okay, we just did that. So that's what you need to include in your report. And it then asks you to do write down the estimated regression equation. So I've actually already written it down here. So these are the two numbers that you're looking at. So you can see I've already written it down. So your intercept does not have, your coefficients come from here. It doesn't matter which order you write them in. So that's your X1 here. That's multiplied, by the way. That's this number here. And rounded up to 3 decimal places. That's what it says in your report. And then multiplied by that variable plus the intercept. So it's pretty much like a y is equal to mx plus c equation. Are you guys all following?
Yep.
Yeah, just say, like, I can't see who's saying it, so you just say it out loud. Okay, so done that. And then it says carry out any two-tailed hypothesis tests using a p-value approach. So just let me check. So the way you write this, it's going to look like this. So these are what you're doing. So it's an equality statement. So they want to know if it's different. So two-tailed means either less than or not less than. So remember, it's beta 1. And these numbers here, this is from a completely different assignment I've done before for other students. So this number over here will actually be your coefficient, which will be this one over here. And then it'll be minus 0. And seeing this equation, beta 1 actually comes from up there. So it's just that divided by the standard error, and that will be your t-stat. Or standard error is the same as S over square root of n, and you can see your t-stat is right there. So for example, I'll show you. So it's this divided by that, and that is your t statistic. So you can see there, that's the same thing. You don't have to do anything else. And you probably already know that your t critical values are, I think, 1 point. If it's above 1.98 or below negative 1.98, around that number, you reject the null hypothesis. So you would write, for example, something similar, which I've written here. I mean, obviously don't write house prices. So you'd say between, annual growth between those 2 years and your mean temperature at the 95% significance level. Are you guys all following?
What numbers did you divide to get the -3?
So those two numbers. So it's that number divided by that number, and that's your t-stat. So you can see right there.
All good, thanks.
Okay. So that's that part there. Repeat. I've covered that.
For that question, are we solving for the hypothesis that B will be equal to 0?
Yeah, so it's going to look like what I just shown here, like this.
Yep, just the same equation.
Yeah, so this part right here will be the same. The numbers
Perfect.
you see below, they are not the same. This is a different assignment.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Down. Okay, and an overall significance test using p-value approach. So when I say overall significance, is that you're looking at this value right here. You want to know if that is less than alpha. And all you need to write is looking at the overall significance test, or we can see that it's less than alpha. Since it is less than alpha, we can furthermore, support our previous conclusion, something like that. So this number, the smaller it is, that means the more confident you are in rejecting this, and that is actually significant. If this number is very close to alpha, that means if you did another sample, you might get completely different results. So that's what really means. Anybody have any issue with that question? Nobody? All right.
Hang on, for the diagram,
Yeah.
for that one, you put the template in the group chat. How do we do the template or the thing for it, like the diagram?
Well, I did that using different software.
Okay, so you can't do it on Excel?
Well, you can download one, or you can draw it.
Okay.
I mean, I do have an app for it, but if 200 of you have the same picture,
Oh, okay.
not a
Yeah.
good look.
All
But the
good.
other one's blank. So I'll just show you how I would do it. Just give me a second. I think I posted in the chat.
So what was your Y and X ranges for for that output?
Your y and your x. So your y is what it says here, annual growth per GDP. So if you go back,
Annual growth, yeah.
so that would be your y here. So some of you guys have it in percentage and some of you guys have it in decimal places. I'm not sure why.
Yeah. And then the X was
Be
the
of the same period here.
temperature of 1990.
Yeah.
Yep.
It
Thanks.
says it right there.
Yeah.
So you,
So I've got a question. How do you interpret the slope?
so how do you interpret the slope? Is you want to see if the slope is so what you're testing is the slope flat or not. So your intercept. So it means that when you actually write this down, you would say in words for every, I assume this is degrees or something, or Fahrenheit. You could say for every unit increase in temperature between that period, the annual, you would say the annual growth GDP would go down by 0.1. You wouldn't say it goes down by negative because it doesn't make sense. Or you could just say it decreases by that number. And maybe you can give an example. You know, just put in, I don't think you can for this one. So you could say it has a negative, it leads, it lowers your annual growth GDP by that amount.
So you would say that for every degree centigrade increase between, let's say, period 1960 to 2000, the annual growth would decrease by 0.11. Is that
No,
right?
Actually 1990. Because that's
Or
what
1990, yeah.
that's what the question says right there.
Yeah. Is that how you would, is that how you would word it?
Yes, so you should all like word it differently, or else. You know,
Thank you.
you're gonna-
Thank you.
So it's just very simple. It decreases by this amount. You know, your annual growth GDP, whatever it is. Any questions for question 5? Okay, we'll go to this question now. So it says write down a paragraph or two to illustrate why the hypothesis test is required in the above regression analysis. So I think a lot of people mistake when they say illustrate. It doesn't mean actually write a picture. It just means to, you know, it says write down, it doesn't say draw a picture. I think a lot of people get this confused why it's needed. So your testing is a slope positive or negative? Does it have a positive or negative effect? Or does it not have any effect? Like does temperature does it have a positive effect in your annual growth GDP or a negative? And that's what you're testing. So this is like in your lecture notes. Like I looked it up. One of the guys yesterday sent it to me. See the underlying mechanism. So this one of a two-tailed hypothesis test is that you want to see if it's, you know, is it increasing or decreasing, the underlying mechanism and the intuition. So the intuition is when you go back to high school, you learn y is equal to mx plus c. And if your slope is 0, that means it does not give you any information. Your x value, which is this one, does not give you any information on your y variable. So that's the intuition behind it. I know it's very vague, but you know, yeah, that's what it really means. It's very simple. Sorry, does that make any sense?
Yeah, all good.
Anybody actually have any sorry, any troubles, questions, Devin? It's pretty simple.
Could you just skip over it very quickly?
Yeah, so the adjusted R squared is just, I'll just show it to you. It's called the coefficient determination. It means how much, when you go back to your output, so you could say 10% of the variation in annual growth GDP over that period of time explains, around 10% of change of the variation in temperature actually gives you information on your annual growth. That means there's other underlying factors. So for example, let's say this was this number was like 90%. That means it has a very direct effect, where this one has a very low effect. So you could say it has a weak relationship. So that's what it means. Any questions on that? It's fine to ask, you know. I can't see who's asking, and I don't think you guys can either. So
Sorry, just a quick question for number 7.
yeah,
When we're answering that in our report, is it just as simple as putting a sentence that literally is just describing that? I mean, it's only worth a mark. So is it literally just as simple as that?
yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks.
yeah. Don't write like an essay on it. Okay, I think I've skipped question 5. Yeah, so I skipped. Fuck, I was getting so confused. I'm going to go with question 5 because I believe I actually skipped this one. For this one, you just have to do what it says there. It's pretty much the same. So for this one, it's the same thing. So you go to your so I already got it highlighted there. And for this one, so it says X1 is mean temperature. So it's right there. And it's also this one, so that would be your X2. So you have to make sure that they are in order. You haven't like changed them around. And because I selected the labels, I tick the labels. And so for this one, question 5, it says, so for this one, you do 2 hypothesis tests for your each of your variables. So you do it for this one and for this one. So you're looking at your t-stat as well. So you can obviously see that this one has an effect because it's less than around negative 1.98 and greater than 1.98, where this one is actually does not fall in the rejection region. It's actually so this one does not, when it's actually included in the model, this one does not provide information on your y variable. So for this one you would reject, and this one you would not. And you can see your p-value. This is your alpha. So when you do the if it asks you, it doesn't ask you to do a p-value thing. Or did I turn it red? Yeah. So for this one, it says carry out two tailed hypothesis tests. So you're gonna have to do this twice. Carry out the relevant. So it's the same thing. So this one you're gonna reject, and this one you're not. And when you do your calculations, like it'll be, so I'm going to go back to this. And for one of them, you're going to have beta 1, which will be this one. And when you do this one, it will be beta 2. Because this is your second variable. Your intercept is beta 0. So you have to be careful when you do the second one. Is there any questions on that? So it's the same thing. You're going to do the same thing, and you'll find your t-stat. It's going to, when you do the calculations, it'll be that number divided by that number, and that you'll get that as your t-stat. Like if you chuck it into your calculator. And when it says the p-value approach, it's the same thing. You just say, looking at my p-value, this is obviously a lot less than 0.05. But this one is greater than 0.05. So this one, you do not reject the null hypothesis. And you can say it is statistically insignificant. So the opposite of what you would say here. Does that make sense?
Sorry, which values go into the equation again?
So let's say we'll do the first one. Yeah. This one here.
Yeah.
You'll do beta 1. So it'll be the same thing. It'll be like this. And the numbers here, this one here, will be the coefficient. So it'll be this number here. So you can do this on your own computer and you'll see, even if you have in decimal places, you should get the same thing. You're going to get this number minus 0. So it'll be just that divided by, usually it's written as S over square root of N. And you'll get your t-stat. But S over square root of N is the same as the standard error. So that you'll get the same thing, even if you put, your S and your N. And for the second one, this one will actually be beta 2. It'll be the same thing, but this one will be beta 2. And you'll put this number minus 0 divided by this, and you have to make sure when you write it that you say it's your standard error, or you could just do S over square root of N, and you'll get a t-stat, which will be that. So just be careful with that one. Is there any other questions for that one?
Sorry, for the, I'm still a bit confused. So the B1, so say we're doing the first half of question 5.
Yeah, just let me pull it up.
It's,
Yeah.
I mean the two-tailed hypothesis is using the p-value.
Yeah, so you'll be doing 2 t-tests.
So 2 p-tests, t-tests using the
coefficients here.
coefficients. So one of them is based on the temperature and the other one's based on the precipitation.
Yes.
Okay.
That'll be beta 1, and that'll be beta 2.
And they're separate equations.
They're separate calculations. So you'll have to do it twice for these two. Don't do it for the intercept.
And we use the coefficient and the t-stat.
Yeah, so you'll do this number minus 0 divided by this number, and you should get your t-stat right there.
By t-stat. Oh, okay, all good.
And then over here it says the overall significance test. It's that number right there.
Yeah.
So that is less than alpha, which is 0.05. And you can say the same thing. You could say at least one of the variables is not equal to 0.
Okay.
Therefore, we can use the variables temperature and precipitation to predict annual growth per GDP between 1990 and 2000.
All right. All good.
So it's just a short sentence for that one.
Could you just repeat that short sentence again? Sorry, just trying
Yeah.
to process that.
So you can say, for example, we can use temperature 1990, 2000, and precipitation to predict a non-zero relationship between your x variables, x1 and x2, to predict y, which is your annual growth per capita GDP. And I think people are still messaging me for the Zoom link. People are weird. So for this one is pretty basic, and this one I really suggest you put a reference why you understand. So you can use anything really, like it's just up to your imagination. I mean, don't do something stupid, like cryptocurrency or whatever. It could be like unemployment. Keep it simple. Unemployment, household spending, whatever you hear like really on the news that affects that, interest rates, stuff like that. So you can just Google how stuff that affects GDP, and you can just put that at least one put references down for that, why you believe that is. And when it says illustrate again, the wording in this is really stupid. You don't have to draw anything. So I think a lot of people get confused with this assignment when they see illustrate. And I suggest you stick with numerical stuff. Don't go into categorical stuff like the proportion of males to females or stuff like that. And when it says how each of preservables will be measured in regression models, you'd say you would include them as X3 and X4 to see if, and you'll do this and you'll perform a hypothesis test to see if they increase their predicted power. So if they increase your adjusted R-squared compared to your previous question or your previous test. Does that make sense?
Yep. So you just have to do another regression statistics analysis.
No, you
for
don't.
Okay.
You don't. You could just say what you would do. So when it says how your preservables, when it says how will they be measured, it doesn't mean you actually have to do anything.
Okay. Right. Cool.
You'll just say, you'll do a hypothesis test where you have temperature, precipitation, and you would say, I don't know, unemployment rate between those two periods, between 1990 and 2000. This is kind of important. And so whatever variable you use, they have to be between that period as well, because you're measuring 10 years. And they'll probably be like X3 and X4. And you'll say, I'll perform a hypothesis test to see if my adjusted R-square is better has it increased or not? And that's really what you have to write. You don't have to do any other tests. Any more questions? I can't see your chats. Sorry.
For question 5 again, I did. Does it really matter if you like use the t-stats? Because I just used like the p-value and I got the same sort of like results.
Yeah, so usually you'll do both, and they should always come to the same conclusion. It's almost impossible that you'll have contradictory, but if I were you, because question 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is actually worth 8 points, I highly suggest you do a hypothesis test.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, you still have the whole, this is due tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I suggest you maximize your points.
So with question 8, so does that mean there's no Excel component we need to do for it?
No, it just says what you'll do. So you say you'll do the same thing as you'd say, I'll do a multiple regression exploration of the ratio growth per GDP with mean temperature over 1990 and mean precipitation and whatever you choose. And they have to be between those two periods. You just say unemployment rate between 1990 and 2000, or interest rate between 1990 and 2000, because you're measuring a whole decade.
Right, okay, so we just need to do another regression analysis of those,
You don't.
of the,
No, you just write what you would do.
right, okay. You just include what your other factor would be pretty much.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty much it for that one. I mean, if you look at the points, it's 4 points. So they want you to write, what you would do, why it would make sense, a reference, and make sure it's a decade's worth. Not, it's really that simple. Does anybody need any more questions?
Would you be able to go through question 3 quickly as well, just to run over it if you have time?
Question 3, I prefer not to do these ones because I haven't actually done them.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you though.
I don't want to give you incorrect answers because I haven't done them. I know how to do them, but not in Excel. So that's really up to you guys to figure that out. Question 3.
For question 6, the second part of it, the underlying mechanism intuition, that part, what does that mean exactly?
So the intuition is you want to see if your slope, which is your beta 1, does it have any predictive power? Does it have a non-zero relationship? So if you have a whole bunch of dot points and your entire model, including intercept, is pretty much flat, it means if you think about a house prices based on rooms, like I've done before, let's say your house price is based on rooms, you would imagine the more bedrooms you have, the more expensive your house is. But if you have like one house and it's cost the same as a house with like 1 million houses, that means it does not. That means your slope is pretty much zero. It means it has no predictive ability. So when it says aid your illustration diagrams, so I think for this one you kind of need to do like a like a trend line, or kind of like plot your data out. So it's not that hard.
Can I ask with the actual report,
Yeah.
would you be able to assist in like what's the best way to lay it out, like with what subheadings, what kind of?
Yes, I've posted this before. I mean, obviously yours will be different.
Yeah.
I don't usually do reports in my line of work. So you can just do, so let's say, for example, you say, you know, you've been, you just do an introduction and say, look, I'm a consultant for this company and I've been tasked to perform some analysis to see if temperature and precipitation has any effect on GDP, and I will do that using some simple descriptive statistics, some hypothesis testing to test my variables, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when you put in your descriptives, don't just chuck it in. Just say, you know, from figure 1, we can see that our mean is this. Our data ranges between certain values. We can see that our median and mean are not the same, so our data is not completely normal. And you could say it's skewed to one way or the other.
And then do we just keep relating it back to the questions?
Yeah, so don't just put question and then answer, because
Yeah, no, I mean, when we're explaining it, because it, like the template they've given us is kind of confusing, and it just says like introduction, executive summary, body of paragraph is to include like analysis and findings, and then a conclusion.
yeah. So
But it's kind of not clear like what we're kind of putting where, and like I'm just confused about that.
yeah, it's fine to be confused. So just do like you know, is your introduction, executive summary. The body will be like what the methodology that you'll be using, and you can talk about it briefly.
Yeah.
And then you'll start doing your questions.
So
Yeah.
go in order of the questions. So
Yeah, so you would
discuss.
Yeah, so let's say you're explaining this to someone in grade 6, or I don't know, would they understand it?
Yeah.
Like at least the introduction, stuff like that. Let's say someone below you in high school. Probably grade 6 is too extreme.
Yeah.
If they can understand it, then that's a good report.
Okay, so it's pretty simple and like straight to the point.
Yeah.
Including all of the graphs and
yeah, don't make it. Yeah, so just put your graphs, and obviously, you know, some things it has to be technical.
so pretty much for the subheadings and the headings, we just do like this is the descriptive statistics.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Headings and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and don't just chuck in the, you know, your descriptive stats there. Talk about the things in it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like a couple of sentences and that's it.
Okay.
That's a good report. You know, doesn't it, when your tutors mark this, and I have marked these things before, we also get the same template. So it's not like they're expecting everybody to have this, and this and that. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that.
Is there any other questions? Guys all fine?
Wait, so for question 4 and 5, we got to do a t-test.
So for 4.
Wait, 4 and 5. Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
And is it with the paired 2 sample for means?
Yeah, so for this one, you'll do a T stat and you'll compare it to your T critical value. So your T critical value, if it's above or below that value, then you reject it.
Wait, above which value?
So I believe it's a 1.998. If it's above 1.98
Oh yeah.
or below negative 1.98. So whatever you calculate. And like I've done it here before. So you'll obviously, that is less than negative 1.98. So you'll reject it.
Yeah.
And you say there is a relationship between temperature and annual growth rate per GDP. And the same thing for the other one as well, but you do, like I mentioned before, you do twice, and then you look at your significance F.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And no worries. Hope you guys do well.
Thank you, heaps.
Well, thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, thanks for your help. Unreal. Appreciate it.
Really, thank you.
Take care.